Hi friends, it's Deanna Williston from Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm here today with a sort of different book. These are historical fictions that I picked up while I was on vacation, and why that's somewhat important. I actually got to meet the writer. So this never happens, but I actually got to meet the writer. She didn't look quite as polished as she does in these photos because she was in the Welcome Center. So really fun in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, in the Towson side. It's called the quiet side of the mountain. There is a wonderful visitor center, which sounds crazy, but they've got nice gardens. There's a bike rack. It's just really, it's so Towson. So you go in and there's wonderful bathrooms. Sometimes you come in straight from hiking and you need having a clean and non-smelly or gross bathroom is just such a blessing. And these bathrooms were modern, they were clean, they didn't smell, you could warm up a little bit. Lovely, and you could go straight in. So if your shoes had any muck or you needed any cleaning, although it's not really super near hiking trails, I will say it can happen. You're a little sweaty or gross. They have a really nice paved walking trail there. So you can go straight into these bathrooms and clean up before you branch out to the visitor center. I just love that. I love that because sometimes you don't want to offend the people who are working there. You know, it's nice. So if you turn to the left, is a gift store for the park, for the Smoky Mountains National Park. And they have great resources, and they're really able to pull out maps and show you some great ideas, some local attractions, as well as things that they have in the store that are functional for your adventures, whether you're doing a driving tour or you're hiking, or you really want to do the paved walkways, whatever you're doing, they actually have a really great selection in the store. And if you're just looking for souvenirs for yourself or for little ones back home, whatever, they have things for all ages. They even have like field guides for littles as well as field guides for adults. They have junior ranger program things. They have, oh, I'm not going to get it. No, they call it the Bark Ranger. They have a dog program now, and just some things for dogs as well, like little bandanas and things, but also some great tips on how to handle yourself if you've brought a pet with you on vacation to the Smokies. So it's really neat. Some of the great hiking things they have that they're going to remind you again and again. They not only have a little cooler with a few sodas, but mainly some nice cold water in that mini fridge that you're going to want to take. They also have a great water bottle holder. I don't know where it is. I thought I had it right here. It's actually a Chico bag. Remember, those are like my favorite grocery bags because they're a good size bag. They're bigger. They look like they're going to be the size of the t-shirt bag that the grocery store is going to give you, that little plastic bag. But they're bigger, they hold more, they're stronger, and yet they'll pack down to like this big, and they can clip onto a key ring or a purse, or you can throw them in a bag. They're super handy to have everywhere to keep you from needing to carry a lot of things or to get those plastic bags at the store, because now a lot of places are using reusable ones. They're just thicker, nasty plastic bags. They're not any easier in your hand or on the environment. So having a Chico bag is a great option. So they actually have a water bottle carrier made from the Chico bag. Now, the person who ended up carrying that, unfortunately, was my husband, and he didn't like that it actually thumped on his chest. And there should have been a way I could have tied it, but he didn't tell me that this was a problem until we got back, and so I didn't know. But make sure you have water on your trip, whether you're doing a walking trail that's paved, or you're going on a full hike, or you're going on an auto tour. You need a bottle of water at least. It's insane. That is my number one tip, but there's lots of things in the store. So if you go, remember, bathroom straight ahead, store to the left. On the right is a local artist center. So they rent it fairly cheaply to local artists, and they only are there for like 3 or 4 days in a row. So at the beginning of our trip, we met a wood carver, amazing wood carver. His work is just breathtaking. And he had some practical things as well, some really high art pieces. Just, again, breathtaking. My husband got some things there. But the second day, I got to chat with this lovely author, and she was just super friendly, and we were talking about so much. So these books, her mother was into genealogy, and so she did the genealogy of the Tiptons. Now, if you go through Cades Cove, the most famous driving loop in Tennessee, I believe that there's a Tipton is one of the names of one of the houses in Cades Cove. I meant to have that here. I'll put it in the description below for you. And so she did some research on like the history and made a historical fiction novel. Please know it's historical fiction, but it's kind of fun to learn more about them. Let's start out here with the description on the back. 1500 years ago, or thereabouts, a family set sail from the cold windswept marshes of Frisia on the coast of what is now northern Germany and crossed the North Sea to Britannia, England, in search of a new life. This tribal family settled on the River Tame and farmed in the West Midlands of England. The tribal chief's name was Tybba, Tybba. This settlement was known as Tibbington, Tybba's farm or village, and became then Tybbington and finally Tipton. After living in Britannia, England, if you're wondering, all these things are in parentheses that I'm reading. After living in Britannia for over 1,000 years, they were known as gentlemen, meaning men of some wealth. A descendant of this family would make another journey across a greater expanse of water to the West Indies. He and his family would eventually establish a home in Jamaica. Working through fact and fiction, legend and lore, and including people both real and imaginary, this two-part book explores their stories from the first settlement on the River Tame, T-A-M-E, to the first descendant to step foot on the Chesapeake Bay. Jonathan Tipton was the first ancestor of this family to establish his home in a land soon to be known as the United States of America. And then a little bit about the author. It says, for 3/4 of a century, Reba Rhyne's home has been in East Tennessee in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains, where her ancestors' heritage runs deep. Writing began as a hobby when she spent months on clients' locations working as a consultant. Using her Tipton ancestors, she is creating the Tipton Chronicles. She has 5 published novels with number 6 on the way. She draws from a wealth of information to write her books, using real and fictional Tiptons, historical and contemporary settings to create her novels. For 60 plus years, she has been a Christ follower who believes her responsibility is to follow the Great Commission found in Matthew. Retired, she loves to travel and write. My only concern right here is when it says she's using real and fictional Tiptons. Why is there an apostrophe S when that should be plural? Interesting. I will tell you as well, she gave me permission. She knew I was going to do this review. So these are the first, and there's quite a series of books. She had them all out, but having not read them yet, and I really wasn't intending to buy more things, I only bought the 2. She did show me some of the features. She always includes bookmarks in all her books, and she tells you that if you like her books, leave a review on Amazon.com/Reba Rhyne, and it tells you some more of the books. There's the 6 at Chestnut Hill Farm, and then it also includes the 2 I have here. So it's just a small little bookmark, but she feels bookmarks are important, and I do appreciate that. I can tell you, I'm just flipping through here. This is eabookspublishing.com. It looks like one of those publishing on demand books, but with that, you get lovely readable print. Very nicely typeset. I love that. Totally readable. The pages are pretty white. They're not pure white, but they are pretty white. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is lovely. Here's the beginning of a chapter. You're not going to miss it. Not going to miss it. That's easy to see. It's a new chapter. It has the author's name and the name of the book here. Does that change by chapter? No. No. And again, there's that apostrophe. I'm not sure what that apostrophe is there for. Let's see here. She has a number of small sections that seem to be marked by a squiggly. That is very similar to what was in the Bookwoman books. Had that in the middle of chapters as well. Lots of dialogue, so you can see the smaller paragraphs are all dialogue. Let's get in here and look. See, remember what the last one didn't have? The Bookwoman books did not have chapter of content. So let's get in here and look. I know this one does because I looked at it with the author. Very interesting. This is called Before and Beyond Part 1. And it has the crest, and it tells you the Tipton crest is Causam Decidit. The sword in this hand caused the decision that ended the war. So that is given right there. As we open it up, sorry, it's a little bit difficult. There, it's just very crisp. I had to really fold it back to get in here. There's a nice title page and acknowledgments. The title page lets us know that this part 1 was copyright 2020. Let's just zip over quick here and look at part 2. It's also 2020. That's what I was curious about. She does really invite you to buy both the books. It's going to be better. It does say when she started writing this, she knew it was going to be quite lengthy, but wasn't really expecting it to be quite this long. So she was surprised and ended up making it into 2 books, and really wants you to read this. All scripture quotations are taken from the King James Version, which is in the public domain. Published by EA Books Publishing, a division of Living Parables of Central Florida, Inc. You can get to them by eabookspublishing.com. Interesting. In her acknowledgement, she says, thanks to Ken Rainey for the excellent cover work. This crest is the official one of the Tipton Family Association of America. All members are descendants of Jonathan Tipton of Anne Arundel County, Maryland. And you know, I live in Maryland, so this book definitely had a connection for us. That's how I ended up choosing these 2 particular books, as they involved the Chesapeake Bay. It says, Ben Belandres for the first 2 maps. He sure outdid me on the last ones, but I got the message across. And I believe she said that was like a son or a grandson, so it was a family member that actually did her maps. Thanks to Maria Kircher for editing skills, and Dawn Staymates, my formatter, for putting up with me, and EA Publishing for doing another great job. This is very interesting here, folks, because it says these books will require reader participation. What does that mean? It says beyond that of reading. You may need to have some research what is provided within these pages. And if you don't, these are going to be the most boring books you've ever read. What? It says this is a book of history. It starts in 500 AD or thereabouts and goes to 1700 AD. Whoa, okay. Why does it say thereabouts? A lot of this book is written before names, dates, and actions were adequately recorded. Very interesting. Where does the reader participate? Let me hold this over here so I can look at the microphone properly. The book covers about 1,200 years of history in places where most of my readers haven't been, and within situations they haven't participated. You'll start at Germania in the 500 ADs or thereabout. Again, that has an apostrophe in that plural. I'm not sure what that's about. I have added maps so you can maintain a reasonable idea of where the characters are in the world, at least the point of which they are in the present time being covered. In most cases, I've been there and can describe the area. You can go to the internet and find other information between chapters for further facts if your interest is piqued and if you desire. Okay, she's also added a chart of the important rulers and kings of England and coupled them to my characters, those in the same time period. So if, instead of being confused, you can put your finger on each as they are in chronological order. How many kings were named Edward or Henry in 1,200 years? Several, I can tell you. Very funny. And she's given, at the start of each chapter, there's a brief summary of events that happened between the time periods. She put that in a different font, so you would know that if you don't want to read it, skip that different font section. Very interesting. Some of the Tipton people are real, but their interaction in the historical activities are fiction. But possible? She doesn't know. So very important to read the foreword in this particular book. She has a very lengthy dedication, by which I mean 3 sides of pages. Then there's an introduction, because this was her family history, somewhat, and very fun, very fun. Table of contents, and you know I was going to say it. Now this one, remember, like the Bookwoman's Daughter, most historical fiction doesn't seem to include table of contents. This one does, so I give her credit for having one. My problem is that it doesn't really connect over to the numbers. You know, I love that ... system that puts it right there. Now, a lot of our chapter titles are really long, so that isn't as much of an issue as it is up here in the introductory things with the Roman numerals, right? Then my problem is down here. The chapter number, this is so wordy because they write out chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5. Some people say it's better grammar to write them out, but I just say it's not as clear when in a table of contents. Now here's the issue. Oftentimes after the chapter title, which is written out, there's a year. So you can make an argument that's why she didn't use a number to denote the chapters, but it makes it so big and wordy. I still would have loved to see like a number 1 and maybe a parenthesis around it or some special symbol, because this is very wordy. And if you're going to be using a table of contents in historical fiction, you're probably not going to need everything written out. This is too wordy. You're going to want to know quick, quick, quick. I like shorter titles. And so it's mainly just, it says like chapter 17, the 1300s, Henry, Marjorie, and Roger of Tipton. I'm not sure because there's no and. So it's the 1300s, chapter 17, the 1300s, and that has an apostrophe S, which people do. I'm not a fan of, but I know people do that. And this is Henry, comma, Marjorie, comma, and comma, Roger of Tipton. So are they all Tiptons? I'm not sure at this point. Maybe. There's no and there, so I'm not sure how that goes. But earlier it has like there's the survey, comma, Anthony and John of Tipton. So Anthony and John of Tipton did not have a comma separating them. Sorry, Tybbington. So they're both Tybbington. So I think in chapter 17 it's Henry, Marjorie, and separate Roger of Tipton. But I'm not sure. You really have to get into the book to kind of figure that out. Here is the chart. I'm not entirely certain because she didn't put labels on the chart. It's very interesting because this one has time in this column, whereas the dates are given in the middle column in the rest. So I'm not sure why that's over there. The rest of these are like small tribes and chieftains or people's names, and then the time, and then, oh, well, I'm not sure what this column is at all. Sometimes it's a person's name or sometimes it's an event. So I'm not sure. I'd like some chart labels, but it's still wildly useful, and nobody else puts these in the book. So I'm really grateful to have it. But if she ever does another edition, or if you figure out what these are, maybe she'll write to us in the comments below and we can pencil those in. I do that sometimes. We could pencil in our own labels so we know that what those 3 columns are supposed to be. Maybe it's just like major people, events, or places. / Because like below Hadrian's Wall, I guess that's a place, but then the next one is Roman Christianity spreads. Murdered by bodyguards. But then the next one's 3 people's names. So I don't know. I don't know what that is. Here's the map. Now to note, it's like that's half the map and then that's half the map. See how it doubles over the North Sea? So some of these things kind of overlap. It's an interesting way of doing it. I guess she was prepared for that page fold. So there you have a decent sized map. It's written pretty clearly. It's handwritten, but they're written pretty clearly. I'm pretty impressed with that. Some of it gets a little bit tiny, but like Shrewsbury, there's Tiptton itself is pretty small. I might have made that something, had a special symbol for that one, since that one's pretty important. Otherwise, if it gets too small for you, I would just use a trick where you take a picture of it on your phone and then blow it up as the picture. She does begin with setting the stage. And she means setting the stage, being attacked from all sides and needing their legions elsewhere. The Roman Empire finally withdrew all their forces from the province of Britannia in 410 AD. This information spread rapidly up and down the seacoast of Europe. So she's hardcore starting that. And yet we're going to eventually get to the Tiptons in America. And so that was all before the title page. Very interesting there, right? And then chapter 1. And here is where she gives us some of the places and names so that you could kind of look them up on the map quickly. I'm wondering now if all of them do that. I'm finding that interesting. Let's see here. This one does. It does. It has a place name so you could look it up. Very interesting. Let's look at another one. Oh, so there's some more maps within the book. That's nice as well. So a more detailed one. Oh, there's a bunch. So it happens time and time again. I'm not seeing any pictures, and I'll be honest, some of the pages are darker black than others. Oh, but that could be, remember she said the history was going to be in a different font. I didn't realize the font was going to be a different darkness. So that's where that is. Let's look in the second book. The second book's going to be set up pretty much the same. Oh, she autographed it. Isn't she sweet? Yeah, it's set up exactly the same. Has the same kind of maps, bookmarks in here. Lots of great maps. That's inside the book. Let's just, I know you've been with me for 20 some minutes. Oh, wait. This isn't just a bookmark. This is a chunky monkey. This has some reviews. This has some reviews on it. That's unexpected. But there was a normal bookmark as well. Interesting. Okay, so she gave us that as well. I'm just gonna pick a little selection here. So here's one of the history bits in a different font, and I'll just read a paragraph or two of this, and then I'll switch to a paragraph or two of the prose writing. So I'm on page 301 of book 2 of the Tiptons of Tibbington. The great battle for Hispaniola turned into an embarrassing escapade for the English invasion force. Even greatly outmanned, the Spanish mulattoes and Africans under the command of the governor, Bernardino Bracamonte, successfully resisted over 10,000 troops under Venables. If you don't know what a mulatto is, you can look that up. I think that's one of those things that she said, stop and look up the things in bold. You may encounter words or terms you haven't before. I have run into that word before. I know somebody that identified as that, being that kind of person. And for her, the way she described it, she was from the Caribbean. And for her, she was intermixed, I believe, with, for her, this is how she identified it, between Spanish and African and some original native people from down there. So she was mixed, basically. That's how she defined it, and that's how she liked that word. But if that's not a word you've seen, or I'm not 100% sure that that's the official meaning of that word, I might go back and look it up. Being fearful of going back to England with awkward and humiliating loss, both Penn and Venables decided to go on to Jamaica with the remainder of their forces, many of whom were dying of dysentery. Again, don't know what dysentery is? You can look it up. Venables was sick from this disease, leaving Penn to take over and orchestrate the whole fight, which he did. So there's actually page front and back, as well as several paragraphs on another page about that history. Now we have, we're going into the historical fiction part. Soon Jamaican sugarcane was produced in abundance in direct competition with other English colonies. Hardly without knowing it, Tipton barrels and boxes were in great demand on this island. Tipton ships were spending more and more times on the seas trying to keep up with the demand. The distance to England and the Isles became an issue. Because of the enlarging and changing economic scene, there was a discussion of a new facility with Captain William Tipton and Peter Walton, and aging Paul Tipton, who'd sailed to Barbados from Bristol, and Samuel Tipton in on the conversation. This one, they decided, would be in Jamaica. They left the decision of overseer to Samuel and Kira. The Tiptons had been on the island of Barbados for 6 years. Was it time to move? Maybe, but Kira had 2 more plantations to check out. She was still hopeful of finding her sisters alive. Looking for her sisters was put on hold while Samuel, Paul, who was Samuel's grandfather, and Aaron sailed to Jamaica to investigate another Tipton venture. If Samuel and Kira went to Jamaica, Aaron was the choice of overseeing the Barbados operation. Kira, I've enjoyed my time spent with you and the grandchildren, said Paul as he waited to walk down the quay to board the Tipton ship. Samuel had had to run a last-minute errand to the government house to pick up some shipping papers. The children have enjoyed having someone else to spend time with. They get tired of the games we play. The islands here in the West Indies are much different from those around England. I think I'll miss the palm and coconut trees. I'll start looking at ours for fruit, which can drop on your head, he laughed, remembering a close call he'd had on a picnic they had taken on the other side of the island. We don't have missiles dropping from trees at home, if I don't count apples or pears or peaches. They don't slice your head open. Kira laughed. Yes, things are different here, but I've gotten used to the hot weather, the hurricanes, and the excitement of a different ship in the harbor. Yes, my love, you have, said Samuel, returning and flourishing some papers which he gave to Kira. Take care of these for me. We'll fill them out should we decide to open up our facility in Jamaica. He turned to Paul Tipton. Papa, are you ready to go? Captain William is on the boat, and I'm sure he's wondering what's delaying us. The rowboat is waiting to take us to the ship. Yes, I'll head on down. You can catch up with me. Kira, take good care of my grandchildren. Paul realized Samuel needed to say goodbye to his wife. He came close and gave her a hug and a goodbye kiss. He wouldn't get off the boat when it came back to Barbados. He would head on to England to load for supplies for the return trip to set up the operation in Jamaica if needed. He started down the street, turned, and waved goodbye. Then he headed to join Aaron and his son William on the boat. We won't be long, stated Samuel with his arms around his wife. How long? Asked Kira, tilting her head back, looking to his eyes and insisting on a definite time. Probably 1 month or less. Don't worry, Ab will take care of you. Won't you, Ab? The old man said. Everyone laughed. You can see there's a lot of dialogue in here, so that's the way she's chosen to write the book. Interesting. I'd like to see how that would play out on something like an Audible, as an audiobook. There's a lot of dialogue. I did notice that when I was going through a lot of short paragraphs because there's a lot of dialogue. There's sections where there aren't, but it seems to be more in the the beginning of a section or chapter, and then the rest of it does seem to be a lot of dialogue. But here's at least 2 pages without any, so maybe it's just in the different sections more or less.